Blog Talk Radio.
And Timothy Spearman. We're live on the Knights of Liberty show from Grimsby in Lincolnshire and Toronto, Canada.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This is freedomtalkradio.net, and you are listening to Freedom Talk Radio.
From beautiful Saline in southeastern Michigan.
Around the world.
This is the 2009 Top 10 Webcam in the World winner. This is SETV.
Yeah, indeed, it's Freedom Talk Radio and SCTV from Saline in Michigan. Just playing one more promo, then we'll get on with today's show. Our special guest today is George Scheld. He's special because every guest is special on the Knights of Liberty show. Just going to play our next promo and then we're done.
Thank you for listening to the Freedom Talk Radio Network and the Knights of Liberty show with your host, Andy Peacher, and author Timothy Spearman. Live from Grimsby in the UK and Toronto in Canada every Saturday at 5 p.m. UK time and 12 noon Eastern Standard Time in the USA and Canada. Call into the show when the phone lines are open. UK call-in number 0131 618 7778. And from the USA and Canada, call 315 462 4100. Visit the station's website on www.freedomtalkradio.co.uk and author Timothy Spearman's website www.shakespeare.com. That's www.shakespeare.com. look at Tim's recent books, Odds on Favourite and Butterfly Dreams, found on the homepage and the Books tab.
Yeah, you can also find Tim's books on Amazon and Lulu. Right, Tim, welcome to our Saturday show again. It's the Knights of Liberty. Hope you've rode them horses very well and got warm because, again, it's winter time and in Canada and the UK we're very, very close to having the same kind of weather. Welcome, my friend.
Oh, thank you, Andy. It's nice to be here, and I'm pretty hyped up for today's show. It's going to be interesting to talk to George because, well, we're in related fields, and it's good that you can talk to someone that you can share notes and discuss your experiences with them and find some common ground. So go ahead, Andy. Let's talk to George here.
Yeah, I'll read a little bit of the bio from the website. George Scheld Investigations Incorporated, private investigator, NES Concept, that's NESCONSET.com, private investigator, NESConcept.com. Considered one of the most experienced and accomplished private investigators in New York State, George Scheld is among a small group of PIs across the nation who secured into industry with a legal background and additional expertise in claims and insurance fraud. He has appeared on more than 20 radio and TV shows as a guest expert and displays an extensive knowledge of information technology, municipal research, fraud detection, undercover operations, surveillance techniques in urban and rural environments, locates trial preparation, asset detention, background investigations, criminal matters, as well as marine and freight claims. Mr. Scheld attended college under a full baseball scholarship, graduating from St. John's University with a BS in history. His graduate degree came from Adelphi University, and his first encounter with the white-collar universe came under very strange circumstances, to say the least. While going door to door in New York City with a stack of resumes seeking a position as a paralegal in any law firm that would have him, George happened upon what he saw as the largest firm to date. Basically, to cut a long story short, he was dropping off his resume, and then the secretary said, "Hold on a minute." They gladly give him an interview, and I think, George can explain the rest, but he then saw two senior partners, and I believe after that he must have got the job. Yeah, we'll let George tell us all about that. George, welcome to the Knights of Liberty show. I'm Andy, and we've got author Timothy Spearman, the guy from Canada.
Yes, hey Andy, Tim, it's great to be here. Thanks, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's funny you were going over the bio. That the way I actually segued into the white collar industry was I was doing very well as managing a ceramic tile warehouse, a very big warehouse in New York. Making a decent salary, and my wife wanted me to use my graduate degree, my legal background. I had a paralegal degree, so I actually knew I would be taking a pay cut by doing it. But I had gone door to door. We put together resumes. And in New York City, you get a very elaborate stack of rejections. Nobody usually lets you past reception. But I was dropping them off. And then one firm I went to, which was a real big firm, the receptionist said, "Yeah, hang out for a minute." And I was very surprised. I went in, and they actually gave me an interview the same day, which I really was not prepared for. But I must have did pretty well because then he brought out a couple more partners. And that went very well. They had baseball backgrounds. So the interview process, was terrific. I knew that they had taken a liking to me, and at the end of the interview, they had asked if I had any questions for them, and I said, "Yeah, I'd like to see the law library." And they kind of looked at one another, and they said, "You do realize this is an accounting firm?" So I was there with a resume to become a paralegal, and I was in a big 8 accounting firm, Ernst & Winnie. And rather than look like an idiot at the time, I kind of went along with it and said, oh, yeah, I just figured a firm of this magnitude would have its own law library. And don't ask me how or why, but I was offered the job. This is a job that, CPAs probably would have killed for. It was a Big 8 accounting firm, and I kind of taught myself the Internal Revenue Code. I couldn't do my own tax return on a 1040 EZ at the time, and I was doing tax returns for the Dave Winfield Foundation and Harry Winston, and so it was a kind of a comical segue into the white collar sector. And after that, I had worked for some international law firm, and then in the law departments for Equitable Life, and after that, I segued right into the private investigation business.
Wow. It sounds fun to me, Tim. Tim, if I remember rightly, you've got some kind of security knowledge. You do a bit of teaching, or did do?
No. That's what I have done for the last 4 years, Andy. I teach security to people, and I do it for the province of Ontario's Ministry of Community Safety and Correctional Services. So the private investigator license is totally separate from the security guard license, but it is possible in Ontario to get a dual license so that you can be a private investigator and a security guard. So I'm quite interested in hearing about one of your more juicy cases, George, in terms of investigation.
Oh my goodness, we certainly had a few. I do a lot of trial preparations. A lot of times, my bigger clients are insurance carriers or the law firms that are representing them. So we do a lot of insurance fraud. But the more juicy end of the business, I guess, comes with the infidelity. We do a lot of matrimonial cases, and even though I don't promote that end of the business, it's certainly an area where people contact me routinely to investigate their cheating spouses, or we have issues of nanny cams with child abuse and whatnot. But we have a lot of very juicy matrimonial cases with some incredible video. But everywhere I've been, I've lived in 3 locations on Long Island, and it doesn't matter where you go. The affluent areas or the inner city areas. The problems are the same. The infidelity is infidelity, and it's going on everywhere. And it's really not that difficult to detect. From my end, we're doing straight surveillances where we're following people. And usually, if the spouse has any indication that their significant other is cheating, they're usually right on. They're spot on. By the time we get involved, they don't want to spend the kind of money that we could charge. Although I will say on occasion we do come back with good news and say, "Oh, your spouse went to church," but it's pretty rare. Usually, we're following people to motels or to very discreet locations, and we have some very interesting video from, just very, conversations that are going on for extended periods of time, right, to actual people actually having sex, and to show that to someone when you're showing them the video in the office. I mean, I just had someone in my office recently. He was a gentleman, probably about 6'9", tattoos, on every square inch of his body, a big, rugged, a man, and he had asked me to watch his wife, who was absolutely drop-dead gorgeous, the woman, and I followed her. She was working at a very prominent catering hall in New York, and literally, as soon as work was over, she left with her boss, and they went to the Econo Lodge, a little local motel, and the way the law works in New York is we don't need video of them, actively in the act of having sex anymore. We just need to put them in a non-business environment for any extended period of time, and that, I guess, would be constituted as, infidelity. But in any event, this guy just wanted the information for his own purposes, and the most important thing with these people is to make sure that they're going to be prepared for what the news, for any news that you tell them. So I remember the next day, after I got this very compromising video of his wife, very intimately involved with her boss, I had family, I had a bunch of people over my house, and he called me, and I told him we would meet the next day, but he couldn't take it. He said, no, I need to get over there. So he came over to my house, and, I have a backyard full of people, and, I showed him the video in private. And, he just broke down. He was like butter on my floor. And, it's the reality of what you find in that aspect of this industry. And, there's a lot of emotion. It's very hard to not get personally or emotionally involved in these kinds of cases and situations. But you really shouldn't. But I've never mastered that. I still do. And, I felt bad. He was like butter. I'm sitting there hugging him, and all he wanted to do was to go back and win his wife's love again. He wasn't pissed. He wasn't angered, because he could have did some damage to the other gentleman, if he did take the other tact. And fortunately, he became level-headed, and this is a scenario where they actually, it salvaged the marriage. They got back together, and this is a couple of years ago, so I'm hoping that they're still doing well.
Wow, that's fascinating. So, one thing I wondered, though, is there a legal sensitivity to actually catching people in the act on camera? How does one get around the legal parameters there?
Well, as long as you're doing, you're shooting video within the confines of the law. In other words, you're not shooting from private property. You're shooting from public locations that anyone can access. There's nothing. You're not doing anything illegal. You can shoot video. The problems arise when you're setting up concealed cameras, in homes and things of that nature, where you need to kind of document that your clients are, in fact, the owners of the premise, because then it becomes a very slippery slope if you're putting tracking devices on vehicles that are not owned by your client, or if you're setting up hidden cameras, in locations where you really don't have legal access to. And what do we have to investigate our own clients and make sure that they own the premise or are legal occupants of the premise? It's a difficult scenario, and you really need to make sure that whatever you're doing out there with respect to video is something that is within the confines of the law of that particular state. And we I just had a case in California, so we work in various states. And you have to know the laws of each. And you have to make sure that if this is going to be introduced as evidence at any point moving forward in a legal proceeding, that you're doing everything legal and on the up and up. Otherwise, you're going to jeopardize, your client's case, and that's just malpractice. That's not a good thing.
I've got a quick question there, Tim and George. What I was thinking about when you was talking there is, you find it difficult to do that because of laws and regulations, but we have Big Brother doing that all the time. So why do the authorities allow to snoop in people's rooms, and PIs are not allowed? Surely one law for everyone.
Well, that would be nice. We're not going to win the battle like with Big Brother. You guys do a good job with it. I'm still restricted, unfortunately, by the. I guess fortunately, I'm restricted by, by regulations and guidelines. But you're right. The information that's out there, with the NSA, it's scary. It's scary the volume, the sheer volume of information that the government is able to get on people. They march their own beat. They have a whole different set of rules than I roll by. If I run a DMV or a license plate on someone, every third time I do that, I usually get audited, and they want to make sure that I'm doing it for legit or valid purposes. And again, I don't have a problem with that myself, but it would be nice if everyone adhered to that same code.
George, up here, they have what's called the Private Information and Electronic Protection Act, and it's fairly strict, and it has to do with the compiling of people's personal information, and you must inform them of why you're collecting the personal information and for how long you'll retain it, and then when you're done with it, for investigative purposes, you're supposed to dispose of it. Now, if it's paper, then you would shred it. If it's electronic, you would delete it. Now, there was this one case out at the airport where this woman was using the airport security cameras. Now, of course, the only purpose for this is to do surveillance at the airport to ensure that you're properly monitoring the facility for the purpose of preventing terrorism and acts of crime, and therefore and that's airport security. But what she was using the cameras for was to spy on her ex-husband, who she was actually still jealously guarding, and she wasn't too happy about him having these affairs with other women, or whatever the nature of the intimacy was. And so she was watching him coming and going with these women or woman. I don't really know how many partners he might have had. But anyway, he was off to various destinations, holiday destinations and trips, and she was watching his comings and goings through the airport security camera. Well, I guess she made the mistake of texting him a message saying, "I saw who you were with today," or something to that effect, or maybe sent him an email. And so he realized that she was spying on him, and knowing probably what her job was, he realized what was up. So he sued her and the airport with the law in question, the one that I just mentioned, and he won quite a substantial settlement. So how does that work then from the standpoint of invading of people's privacy? Has there ever been a case where anyone has tried to sue you or your company for this invasiveness?
Well, it absolutely goes on in the industry, Tim. No question about it. And you're probably a lot. Well, you are obviously a lot more of an expert in the security end of the business. Although I do get involved in it, probably not to the extent that you do, but our firm has never been sued because we've always been utilizing a public camera, or actually it's a private camera for your own personal use when it's something that that is certainly not within the purview of what her parameters of work suggest she's able to do. That's illegal, and that's why they won that particular case. Now, in that scenario, what I would have done is looked at it, know what the video is, and then subpoena it in a legal proceeding. And that's really the way to get that information introduced. So there are ways of circumventing it, but absolutely, there are all sorts of gauntlets, and you're right. They're making it a lot more difficult. And again, I think it's kind of a good thing. They're making it a lot more difficult to utilize private information. Like I said, I get audited routinely when I'm running license plates. That never happened 10 years ago. You tell me somebody cut you off, and you give me a license plate, I could run it and tell you who the person was. And obviously, what are you going to do with that information? You're going to either threaten the guy, or it's going to be used for some silly vengeance. And that stuff routinely went on, but they really didn't monitor the situations. Now, very few firms can run actual full credits anymore. It's strictly monitored, whereas it was the Wild West just a few years back. There was a lot more flexibility with respect to the information we could get on the Internet, through municipal records, and even though the laws were always protective, even back then, they were certainly never enforced. Now, they're enforcing them much more substantially, like your scenario. That was in Canada, Tim?
Yes.
When that happened, yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So they are definitely enforcing them a lot more strictly. There is a lot of litigation right now with privacy invasion issues. And there's a lot of private investigators that are being sued civilly for violating. And unfortunately, a lot of the PIs don't know the law, and they don't know what their parameters are, what they can and what they cannot do. They just want to do the best things out there for their client, but you really, like I said before, you're walking a slippery slope if you don't educate yourself into the specific venue. And in the U.S., it's really broken down by state. Each state has their own individual laws. Some much more strict than others. There are some that are very liberal out there, and there's some that are very, very, very conservative, very strict when it comes to privacy issues. I think they're all starting to head in that strict direction, though.
Mm-hmm. I'm just interested, which states would you consider to be the most strict and conservative when it comes to privacy issues?
The big ones, usually California, New York. The ones where it's been a substantial issue in the past. And then some of these other states, the Carolinas, need to catch up a little bit when it comes to enforcing their laws and regulations with respect to privacy. But it's usually the big ones. That
would have been my guess. I was assuming that to be the case anywhere where there's wealth and power and
absolutely
status and position and star celebrity lives that are in play. You would naturally expect the laws to be more strict. Interesting, yeah. I'm wondering also about, I saw a film with Sally Fields and Kiefer Sutherland recently where her daughter was tragically murdered by a sex offender psychopath played by Kiefer Sutherland, who did quite a job.
He does that well.
Yeah, he did do a good job at the role. The film was disturbing to watch because you see the murder take place, and it's horrifying. And then Sally Field goes on an investigation and tracks him, and she ends up joining a group that goes or poses as a group therapy session to try and help people recover from their loss, and it's actually a vigilante group. So my question to you is, in these investigations, how often do you think it would be the case that a private investigator might actually be investigating something for the purpose of a client undertaking some act of vigilante reprisal or revenge for a crime committed? Maybe victim is some member of their own family or something to that effect. Do you have any knowledge about how often that sort of thing would be going on?
Well, I mean, for sure it does go on, Tim. There's no question about it. And it's I'm going to be giving a lecture at CW Post or Long Island University in the summer on the moral dilemmas in the private investigation industry, and that's really the primary issue, I think. And you hit it right on the head. I mean, there's a lot of them. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of, we play in gray areas all the time in this business, and you're not going to be successful in it if you don't. But you need to know, what you can and cannot do. That question, and there's been a couple of cases where people have, where private investigators have been held liable, and I can look them up for you. But private investigators have been held liable for the actions of their clients when the courts, construed that the investigators should have been more on top of what the motivation was behind why they were seeking information. I'm mixed on that. I mean, I don't know how far we need to investigate our own clients before we go ahead and do an investigation. Although, I'm in this business now for over 25 years, and you do develop a little bit of a gut feeling when you're dealing with people, when you're taking a retainer. That it doesn't mean that people can't fool you once in a while, but they have to come up with a real good story as to why they want specific information, if it really doesn't make a lot of sense. But if there's someone out there that's just seeking information, I will always ask what the purpose of it is, and you can generally tell if there's, going to be any issues. And I say generally because it's not a foolproof method. I mean, I have done background checks on clients when I thought that their motivation was, was less than noble, because they do use the information for unscrupulous purposes, without question. I mean, it happens all the time. I don't know how many cases or how much case law there is, but I know that it's definitely an area of the industry that's under the microscope currently. And the fact that private investigators never used to be held liable. In other words, if someone came to me, they wanted to locate someone, all they have to do is say it's a high school buddy, from many years ago. And I'm putting the information in the computer. I'm spitting out a report telling them where this guy lives or where this woman lives. And, it could be exactly what you're saying. It could be a scenario where, it's a psychopath looking for an ex-lover, and there's really no way for me to know that other than if I conduct a background investigation on the client, and that's not a cost-efficient thing to do. But if I have any gut feeling that something's not right, I'll either not take the case or I will actually, conduct some kind of a background. And conducting a background on your own client doesn't always work because they may have no criminal record. They may have nothing glaringly, apparent that they're up to no good. So it's a very difficult area, and it's something I've struggled with, on occasion when I'm giving information out. I'm saying to myself, gee, this really could be used, for unscrupulous purposes, and it's scary. It really is scary. It's a tough end of the business, and you really need to discern, or I guess hopefully that comes with experience. And I think I've made good choices. I haven't been made aware of any problems, with clients that I've dealt with where they've gone out and beat people up or got, in certain cases murdered people based on information that you've given them, employment, locations, addresses. So it's a scary part of the business and a very real one.
Oh, yeah. You never know what people are going to do with information. I did something related to just doing an astrology chart for some lady who wanted to have a chart done for her son. So I did the astrology chart, and she sent it to him by mail, and the chart revealed that he was probably involved in unscrupulous business activities and slightly shady business activity, and she sent this to him, and he became very, very agitated and upset because he said, "Who knows me? Who sent this? How do they know about me?" So yeah, I mean, it's amazing what people will do with information. I think Andy has a question for you, George. Just a sec.
Sure.
Andy?
Yeah, it's not so much a question, but a comment. I'm just reading this news story. It just backs up really, especially in the UK, they're at it like rabbits, I say. Private investigators are convicted of unlawfully obtaining personal information. Two men ran a company that tricked organisations into revealing personal details about customers, have told in December that they're guilty and they're breaching data protection. The Investigating Limited worked on behalf of clients to trace individuals. I find a lot of this is happening when it primarily relates to debt recovery. That companies are hiring PIs to get debt recovery and they're lying. The court heard that the company had routinely tricked organisations, which included general practitioner surgeries, doctors, TV licensing, insurance companies, building societies, councils, water companies, and so on. Private investigators, the judge said, must learn they are not above the law, while the majority of private investigators go about their business in an honest way. Operators such as this company, ICU Investigations Limited, taint the industry and blight the reputations of the good ones, basically. These men knew they were breaking the law, and they carried on 2,000 times, actually. leading on to another story of that, a general practitioner, which is a doctor over here, sort of manager of the practice, he was fined £99 or about $130 per patient because he went into files, 1,950 files, unnecessarily, because as a practice manager you go into one, maybe a dozen a day, but to go through the whole practice surgery of all your patients, so he's been charged. So basically what I'm saying is your personal data is very vulnerable these days. On a light-hearted note, though, let's remember Barnaby Jones, Jessica Fletcher. We've got Cannon. We've got the US Jennifer and Jonathan Hart. They're all brilliant people. Remington Steele. That I used to watch all them programs when I was younger. The PIs and Magnum.
Right.
Magnum was a good one.
Yeah, that's what everyone assumes the PI business is like. I mean, it's a comical scenario. I kind of take you remember Columbo?
Columbo, yeah.
Columbo, that's the approach I take out. Yeah, with the cigar. He always made it seem like you were helping him, and that's the approach I think. Certainly from my experience, that gets the most response. A lot of the PIs out there, especially in the U.S., kind of come into the business through law enforcement. So they're used to showing a badge and being able to get information. So in my background is very different from what most of the PIs segue into. I have a legal background, I have an accounting background, and I have the fraud background, the claims background. I guess it's more of an academic scenario or background than most of the PIs out there. So it's been very, very, very helpful. And the approach that I take is Columbo. I play dumb, and I make it appear that people are helping me, and I'll start leaving, and I'll come back and say, oh, just one more question. That's kind of it works. That's all I can tell you. The toughest. I mean, I've been very successful in getting information in every community. I'm a white, a person living in suburbia, Long Island. Where you think I would be shut out of African American communities, but no. I mean, I've been very successful in Spanish Harlem, or in Harlem, or in the inner city areas. The only place that I really struggled to make any progress and get any information was the illegal Irish up in the North Bronx. I could not infiltrate that community at all. And that's with my mom being from Donegal, so.
Uh-huh. I like your approach there, because this quality of playing dumb and allowing yourself to be underestimated. I think of the holy fool. The holy fool is always underestimated, and so he's able to slip through the cracks and go places where no man's been before, because he's got this ability to be liminal and on the margin where no one notices him. I have a buddy who was actually the son of Bozo the Clown, and he would go into washrooms with his clown makeup on and his clown suit, and he would watch politicians taking bribes in the washroom. He would see drug deals go down, because no one takes the clown seriously. And you know what? They take the clown seriously, because the clown knows everyone. He knows
that's correct.
He knows all
you tell me right on with that, because when I take the Columbo approach out there, it doesn't mean I'm not observing and I'm not seeing and I'm not, cognizant of everything that's going on there. Everyone, I mean, there's, I guess maybe I should wear a clown suit on surveillance. Who knows?
Why not?
Yeah.
It's amazing the psychology of people, because they really don't take the clown seriously.
Yeah, I get that. That's funny. It's I agree 100% with that.
So obviously, since we've seen so many instances where the store Santa Claus is not such a nice guy, or a mascot at a sports event might be a terrorist, they've become more cognizant of the role played by the entertainer, right, or the jester. It's not always a jest. Sometimes it's no laughing matter at all. So they've become a little bit more wise to that ploy, right? But still, it's not a bad disguise for a private investigator, I guess.
I'll give it a shot. That's hysterical. I've tried a million of them, Tim. Believe me, because part of what I do is process service. So we're trying to serve very difficult papers. And again, it's the Hollywood versions of this, or the reality TV shows that flood the networks now. It just portrays this industry so, I don't want to say negatively, it's just so inaccurate. It's bordering on comical. I try, if I'm serving a paper, you don't want to have a discussion with the person who you're serving. You just want to go there and get your job done and get out of there. But getting back to the disguises, I mean, I've been the pizza delivery man. I've been, I've a baseball coach, which I actually am, so I have the uniform. I've gone up to doors, dressed as a coach, where it looks like you're almost there for some kind of fundraising episode. So you have to get very creative. The best people, or the people who do the most successful in this industry, it's some kind of a balance of natural aptitude. I mean, that's important, don't get me wrong, but you also need some street smarts. You need to be a very fluid, very flexible thinker out there. You can't just be a book smart person. You need a combination. And if you have a combination of the two, and if you have any balls at all, and really any lack of, if you're not afraid to go out there and do something, you'll do very well in this business. There's no question about it. And putting disguises on and wearing wigs when you're following someone, or putting a hat on, taking a hat off, changing a shirt, that stuff is all important. And it's that really just comes with experience. It really does.
Now, when you're putting a tail on someone, or if you're following someone, how do you do it so that they don't notice? Like, for example, in retail loss prevention security, where you're doing store security, checking shoplifters and stuff, you try to masquerade and present yourself as an ordinary shopper within the store, and you try not to be too conspicuous, where you give yourself away as store security. So how do you avoid being detected when you're conducting surveillance?
Right. Well, yeah, it's a very different animal when you're on a highway or when you're on back roads, in the suburbs or in a rural area, in the city. But first thing you do is you get rid of Magnum PI's. What did he drive? A Ferrari, I think it was. You lose the Ferrari. You go to Columbo's, Honda Civic or whatever. You use a vehicle that's not brightly painted, that doesn't have bumper stickers that are going to catch people's eye, something that just kind of blends. And if you're on a highway, you try to always have another vehicle between you and the subject, so that if they are, if they do happen to be a street smart person, or if it's someone that's engaging in infidelity, or if it's someone that's engaging in a major fraud, alleging that they're injured, but they're really not injured and they're out there working, so that they're aware that people might be watching them, and they might be looking in their rearview mirror. You really need to blend. And again, it's everybody in the world, thinks that they can do it. They think surveillance is a piece of cake. It's exciting. It's fun, and it's none of that. It's a very difficult thing to do, and it really it takes a lot of experience. And I can't tell you how many times, I've screwed up because I've been either back too far and then they've turned off, or if, you allow too much room between you and the subject, you get caught at a red light. I mean, I've broken every traffic violation. I can't tell you how many things I've done out there with respect to breaking the law from a traffic standpoint that I've done, and you still lose people. It's difficult. So usually when I get a case, the first time I surveil someone, I err on the side of caution, and I really maintain a very loose. I'll let one or two cars between us if we're on a regular highway. If we're on the back roads, I wait for someone to make a turn, count a couple seconds, and then you go up to the intersection, and then you make the turn, and you hopefully, detect them or find them, moving forward. But it really limits the chances of them, observing you, especially. There's some people out there that are very simple to follow. They're just completely oblivious to everything, and you can follow, and you could be 10 feet behind them for 40 miles, and they have no clue. But there's a lot of sharp people out there, and those are the ones, obviously, where we need to interject some of these, these tactics. The bottom line is, it really just comes with experience. It's kind of a common sense. That's what I said before. The people who survive and do well in this industry have some semblance of street smarts. You just can't be doing things out there like following them directly behind them. And it's difficult. It really is. There's no question about it. Everyone thinks it's a piece of cake. It's easy. But in the beginning of your career, you definitely either get made more often or you lose. Well, you don't get made. I shouldn't say. People really don't see you that often. But a lot of times you will lose the subject that you're following because you're just not experienced enough to be able to, follow. And I followed people for hundreds of miles. Into truck stops and road stops, and that gets very, very difficult. But depending upon the magnitude of the case, it's doable if you know what you're doing. But it's definitely difficult. There's no question about it.
Fascinating. So, Andy, you got a question, I think, right?
Yeah, I was just wondering. You probably don't yourself. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I've seen on TV that obviously private investigators tend to double up as bounty hunters. We know they double up as debt collectors as well. So have you had any sort of bounty hunting experience?
Yeah, no, I've never meandered off into that end of the business, only because my background, that would be more for someone who segues in through law enforcement. I've never found a need to do that. I've always, thought that my legal background kind of gears me towards trial preparation, getting cases ready for trial, a lot of insurance fraud, people that allege that they're injured that really aren't, doing surveillance, subpoenaing medical records, interviewing witnesses, things of that nature. And there's plenty of that. There's more than enough of that to go around. So what a lot of PIs are doing now are finding niches. Some are just certified fraud examiners. They'll just focus on health insurance. Some just do the security end of the business, and or some will go into bounty hunting. And for me, I've never thought it was really a viable option. I don't look at myself as a as a bounty hunter or a renegade. I certainly wouldn't have reservations, to do it. I wouldn't be afraid to do it or anything of that nature. It's just never been an area that I thought I needed to develop an expertise. Although a lot of the tactics that I use would be, I certainly am in a position to locate people and give that information to the companies that go ahead and try to take these guys in. I've been involved in that.
I was just going to say I realised just looking at the news. Well, it's big time anyway. You probably get involved in these cases. But I had to confirm by reading our local news what people tend to do over here. I don't think they're using PIs at the moment, but the common, I've had an accident, my neck's damaged,
right.
I've got to wear this brace or this whatever for several months and I need my compensation. And then the next day or the week later, they're playing baseball or they're swimming, right. That's big time fraud over here with the insurance companies.
Oh, and here also. Honestly, that's about 80% of what I do, I would say. That's my bread and butter. Insurance companies call you, retain you to conduct surveillance on someone. Someone submits a claim, and it happens all the time. I've followed people from courtrooms where they have collars on, and got video of them leaving the courtroom, going out surfing. Or we have one gentleman who came from court literally in a collar. If you saw this guy in court, you would think he was on his deathbed. He was that bad. He was that acting to that degree. He left there. We found out he was in a rock and roll band, a heavy metal band, and we found out it was his birthday and they were having a special gig. So literally the same evening that he appeared in court looking like he was on his deathbed, he went up on stage and started ripping his shirt off, gyrating like making Elvis Presley look like a mime, basically, dancing around, and at one point he actually did a backflip on the stage. So this is a guy who had a collar and couldn't move in court, and that evening he literally did a backflip, which is a very athletic move. So the video we have of these guys, we have guys surfing, lifting couches, lifting weights, bowling, playing soccer. I mean, just hundreds of different videos. And the funny thing is, one thing with the surveillance is you really never know what you're going to find out there when you go on a surveillance. Sometimes you find things that have nothing related to your specific case. I was in the South Bronx recently where I was watching the exact same scenario with someone who had a civil lawsuit. They were involved in a simple automobile accident. The insurance carrier thought that they were exaggerating their injuries. So we went to their they lived in a project in the South Bronx, which is a difficult surveillance when you're dealing in nice suburbia areas. You can park a car on the street and someone leaves the house, it's probably the subject. But, when you're dealing with the projects, you need a real good photograph or a perfect description of someone. Otherwise, you could follow the wrong person and waste everyone's time and money. So, there's different issues there. But in any event, in this particular case, I was watching someone. We never saw the gentleman who we were watching, but it was 12 o'clock, broad daylight, absolutely beautiful, clear day in the summer in the South Bronx. We saw three gentlemen walk over to a broken-down Lexus, which was 10 feet away from the surveillance van, and they had no idea, obviously, there's anyone in the surveillance van. They jacked the entire car up, dropped the whole engine. I mean, these guys should have been auto mechanics. And they wheeled the engine. They stole the engine right in front. They actually banged it into the surveillance van at one point when they were wheeling it away. In a matter of 5 minutes, they had stolen an engine. And I've seen countless, situations like that. I've seen butchers stealing filet mignon from supermarkets when we're out there watching people. It's just you never know what to expect.
Yeah.
I actually had someone break into the surveillance van when I was in it. We were watching someone. It was in a commercial area. There was only one car left in the parking lot. It was very, very late. And you had the car of the subject who we were watching and the surveillance van. And then another vehicle pulled in, and you know what to look. I mean, you know if something doesn't look right. So I was just watching them. They pulled up directly next to the surveillance van, jumped out of their car, and within 10 seconds tops, they had jimmied the door and opened the door to the surveillance van. They were breaking in the car. They had no idea that I was in there. So, of course, I screamed, and they jumped back into their car and probably wet themselves. But, you never know what you're getting involved with sometimes on these surveillances.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever investigated insurance fraud related to a fire, property fire?
Well, I actually have an insurance adjuster's license, and I have a fire. I am qualified to investigate, fire losses. But no, I never have. Definitely outside the purviews of what I consider myself an expert in. But what I have done in claims, homeowner claims and whatnot, is try to document the loss. If people are saying that they had $5,000 cash, or they had stereos, and they had the most expensive laptop computers, and they had 20 of them there, that kind of stuff. We try to document that. But never investigating the causes of fire or anything like that. Different animal altogether, but that's another area of expertise for people. There are people that definitely specialize in it.
Right. So, Andy, you got a question?
Well, just one, because of your history sort of knowledge What did people do in historical times? In previous centuries when I guess they needed a PI. I can't actually find anything relevant, so that's why I've asked you that.
Oh, that's so funny, yeah. And I don't know when that. Yeah, that's funny. I was a history major, and I know Tim's a big history guy, and I don't know. When PIs, I would imagine that the first PIs were just friends of people saying, "Look, can you watch this person or help someone?" I don't know when that industry became a viable industry. I should know that because I've been in the industry.
Well, the first private security company is the Pinkerton Security Company.
Right. Okay.
That was the first contract security company, and they would have done some PI work, but that's going back to the era of Abraham Lincoln, President Lincoln's period. Alan Pinkerton was a contemporary, and he was in charge of guarding the president. And so the Pinkerton Security Company, to this very day, still supplies guards to the U.S. Secret Service. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Pinkerton is huge. But yeah, then that's the first documented or first on record. And before that, there were obviously people doing PI work. They just were not called PIs or... not sure. We're going back, but yeah, obviously it's something that's certainly been around. People probably did it themselves, right? Yeah, I mean, you would think they went out there and kind of try to document if someone was ripping them off, or it was never an organized craft or skill, I guess, until Pinkerton. That sounds right. And that was the mid 1800s, right?
Yeah. So I guess in the old days they would have just agents of the Crown, or the Sheriff of Nottingham would send his agents out to spy on people to see who had been invading the Lord's land and stealing his potatoes, right?
Yeah. I read a lot of your website, Tim. I know you're very versed with that aspect of it in the history, and you're probably right on with that. Absolutely.
So yeah, it's fascinating, the world that we live in and all the history and how things have evolved over time. And so I guess, like a PI from a Magnum PI era to now has changed so much that it's almost like a whole new field altogether. So what kinds of changes have you seen, say, over the last 10 years?
Oh, well, obviously the biggie is the Internet. The Internet has changed. I mean, you have very little private, use for private people anymore, other than infidelity. But when you I used to conduct locates routinely for people, but everybody right now, if you're an Internet-savvy person, you can go on there and conduct your own locates. Now, we do have access through the private investigator's license to databases, that transcend what the general public can get. But if you're believe me, the first person I'm hiring in my business, is someone that really knows how to negotiate and travel the Internet. So that's been the primary one. The other is that the insurance companies are starting to do a lot of in-house investigations. Everyone is in cost savings mode now. The economy, generally my business does well when the economy is poor, because people are out there, conducting fraud and ripping one another off more routinely than in good times. But the latest recession, I really haven't seen that trend. And I think that's because the insurance companies themselves are going in-house, and rather than pay the outside vendor services of a firm like mine, they have people on salary that are investigating it. And again, I guess it's a good thing for their bottom line, but it's really impacted the industry to the point where private investigators are kind of, developing their own niches. I used to be, a general PI, and I would do it all. Whereas now you're kind of developing an expertise. Right now, my expertise well, I mean, I still know the business like the back of my hand, but I do a lot of trial preparation, getting cases ready for trial. I'm bringing on a security guy into the fold, who is the head of security at Rikers Island, and he was just asked to go to Mexico and try to break out of a prison there to see what flaws they had in their particular incarceration system, and he did. He went to the prison and actually broke out. And unfortunately, the gentleman running the prison got fired as a result. But they were very appreciative. So that's another area. It's a very specific niche. Security bounty hunters. There's people that are just going out there investigating health insurance fraud. Health insurance fraud right now is, I'm predicting, right now it's $60 billion a year. That it's costing Americans for health insurance fraud, and with the new administration and what's going on in healthcare right now, I project that number is going to go up substantially, because they had such problems with the website, through the Affordable Care Act, that they're not going to want it. They're going to be paying on every claim that's submitted right now. They don't want any problems with not paying claims, and that's just a green light for all of these unscrupulous physicians out there or providers to milk the system. So that's going to jump from $60 billion to $90 billion over the course of the next 4 or 5 years, and present another niche for another group of PIs that come in and have that expertise. And so I think the industry is segmenting. You'll have people that'll just focus on surveillance, and it's getting to the point where general PIs are becoming dinosaurs, and you're becoming experts in specific areas.
Yeah, that makes good sense. So that's likely to evolve into whole new titles for what you do.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. So what, for example, do you see as an emerging new occupational title for someone who's
I think they might fraud examiner, where with the increase in say health insurance fraud, I think you're going to have just a group or a niche group of individuals that are going to be reading medical reports. Trying to you ever receive these? Whenever I get an explanation of benefits, I mean, I think I need a degree just to understand the bill or the invoice. So you're probably going to have a group or a team of independent people going through these to see if the providers are overbilling, or if they're billing for stuff that was not really necessary, or the same types of fraud that are going on now. It's more abuse than fraud. Fraud. In the healthcare industry, you'll see a lot of. You don't see a lot of organized crime involved in it, but when you do, it's really providers or physicians billing for services that were never rendered. I mean, I did a case with a Westchester chiropractor where the insurance company was Guardian Life, and they had suspected that he was submitting claims for individuals that never went to him. And the reason they were suspecting that is because he's up in a very affluent Scarsdale, beautiful neighborhood up in Westchester County, and most of his clients were from the Bronx or from Yonkers or from very far away, and they were going 4 or 5 times a week. So just the sheer volume, rose a red flag to them. So they get a company like me involved. We go there and we start interviewing these people, just asking, hey, what does the doctor look like? What does the office look like? Very simple, PI 101 kind of questions. And right from the onset, you see that it's major fraud, and that type of fraud, even though it's a small percentage of the $60 billion in terms of the number of cases, makes up a substantial amount, or takes a substantial dollar amount. I mean, this chiropractor was bilking the system for millions of dollars. He's in jail now, but most of these guys, it's a slap on the wrist, and there's no major adverse repercussions, no criminal time. Because it's really an abuse. They're just overbilling, or they're billing for services that were not rendered, but it's not the outright fraud like in that scenario. So it's very hard to detect. So I really see moving forward, a group of specialists coming in to really get a handle on what is a legitimate claim and what is not a legitimate claim from the health insurance perspective. And hopefully they'll get a handle on it, because I really think it's going to get out of control over the next 5 years.
When you say out of control, you just mean the invasiveness in terms of privacy is going to be such a problem that there's going to have to be legislation enacted to contain how much surveillance is permitted and so forth?
Well, that's part of it. But really, when I say out of control, I'm just talking about the sheer volume of what it's going to cost Americans in tax dollars. Right now, it's at $60 billion. If it jumps up to $90 billion, I mean, that's a prohibitive loss. That impacts everybody's wallet. There's no question about it, and there's no way around it. I mean, everyone thinks that insurance fraud or health insurance fraud, that this is just health insurance now that we're talking about, the $60 billion. This is not even counting the people who are out there staging accidents or, saying that they were hurt in an accident and they're suing for that. That's completely separate. So when you're adding that in, you're talking about billions and billions and billions of dollars in fraud out there. But just the health fraud alone, it's not a victimless crime. It's impacting all of us, and people don't get that.
Do you think a lot of this health fraud is because maybe with different rules, regulations with the government, like Obamacare, people are driven to this extreme lengths?
I just think it's a crime of opportunity, and like I said, it's more of an abuse. With Obamacare, I don't think they're going to have any kind of a handle on, investigating health insurance fraud. They have allocated money for it, but the bottom line is they've had such stumbling blocks already with the website alone, that the last thing they're going to do is start, questioning payments and not paying providers, because that's bad publicity for them. They need things to run very smoothly, at least for a few years. So they're going to be paying claims that probably should not be paid, and it's just going to mushroom. It's this is an aspect of the industry that a lot of people are not on top of yet. This is really people haven't even considered this, but believe me, it's going to happen. There's not a doubt in my mind that the health insurance fraud is going to mushroom to the point where it's going to have a major adverse repercussion on each taxpayer. There's not a doubt in my mind, and it's unfortunate. It's preventable, but it's where we're at.
Mm-hmm. In my academy, when we teach security, each new group of students that come in, they have a number that's given to them by the ministry as a applicant student. They have to complete their 40 hours worth of training, and then they're issued a completion of training number, which allows them to log into the ministry's website in order to book their test. Once they've passed their test, they can then apply for their license. Now, that would apply to private investigator license as well. Now, the process of logging them into the system has become more difficult, so my boss has to spend a good few hours logging the students in for each class each week, so it's becoming more onerous in terms of time and time demand on his end. But I'm looking at in this context of prevention, when we speak of security and when we speak of police work, we're often thinking in terms of prevention. How can you prevent a building from being broken into? How can you prevent this type of security breach or that type of security breach? And you touched on it when you talked about that prison facility where they were looking for the Achilles heel or the weak point in the maximum security facility. So in your mind, is there significant enough effort going on in trying to establish a system to properly screen people so that these fraud-related or criminal activity-related things are caught before they happen? Do you think that there's enough effort going on in the area of prevention, or do you think they could put a lot of more resources into that than they are?
Yeah, I mean, great question. There's not a doubt in my mind they need to put more resources into that, because the bottom line is if they did that, they would see a lot of the abuse, comes from a small percentage of the population. In perfect example, chiropractors are notorious for health insurance abuse. So focusing on that particular group, to me, it's not a difficult thing to scrutinize, these, to set up some type of or to facilitate a group to really look at every third or fourth invoice or bill that goes through as a preventive measure with a trained eye. It's a great concept. It would really, really solve a lot of issues and save a lot of money moving forward. But the way the economy is right now, I don't know that people are amenable to throw. They might be looking at it like throwing good money after bad, and I don't agree at all with that. I think you're right on. They definitely need to put a lot more resources into the preventive measures. Otherwise, they're going to be paying much, much more substantially down the road. There's no question. But people don't think like that. They look at the bottom line now, and it's unfortunate. It really takes a creative individual to move forward with a policy or a concept like that. And if you ever find someone that can implement it, and even on a business level, in a specific business, they'll go out there and they'll get the cheapest alarm company to put alarms on their properties and cameras. And whereas if you really thought it out, it might cost you a little bit more in the beginning, but it'll save you in the long run. This is not something. It's not the type of a thing where you can take shortcuts. You need to do it right.
Right. Mm-hmm. Even in dating sites, you've got these fraudsters that come in and they'll have a nice picture of a nice-looking gal, and they'll post it there, and they're actually a male posing as a female, engaging in fraud, trying to pull the heartstrings of a particular person that's looking for a lady, and then they'll manipulate them into making a money transfer for them or something of that nature. Mm-hmm. And because they have basically got into the person's heart and orchestrated the deception based on toying with their emotions, they end up doing something stupid just because they've allowed themselves to be manipulated by
mm-hmm. That's fine. Yeah, no, you're right. You're right on with it. And then you have, there are websites out there, elaborate websites that you would never, for Citibank, for all of these major corporations that are just bogus, fake websites, and all they're doing is collecting information. And again, this is all part of the what we discussed before, the privacy issues that are going on. But people are, you're providing. If you think a website is legit, either a dating website or a bank, or it really was rampant with the Obamacare, and I don't mean to harp on that, but a lot of fake websites got set up. There was major fraud going on there, and it was really the elderly were the primary targets in those scams, but they were providing personal data, dates of birth, social security numbers, medical histories, things of that nature, and these poor people were being scammed, and it's a shame. And a lot of them, these were people who could not afford to lose their life savings, but unfortunately, many of them did. They have since they've gotten the website up and running. Those opportunities have dwindled a bit, but there were a lot of fake websites with with the Obamacare through the states and through the federal government that were set up. A lot of them have been shut down since, but thousands and thousands of people were built. You have some very clever fraudsters out there that are setting these things up where maybe a trained eye may discern that something's wrong with it, but honestly, the average person would never, especially the elderly.
Mm-hmm. Is there no way of those poor people recovering their loss?
I think you can, but you're getting pennies on the dollar. I mean, I've never really seen, a scenario where someone's engaged, someone's the victim of a Ponzi scheme or a scheme like these websites are creating, where they get anything even remotely close to what their loss is. So if you're losing, some of the people, are losing thousands and thousands of dollars, and they're recovering, peanuts, because if there are convictions, and there's not always convictions, because they're difficult cases to convict, but if there are convictions, the assets are all gone, and they're freezing what's left of them, and it's such an arduous process that, unfortunately, the recoveries are so small that it's really negligible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Andy, are you still there, my friend?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm having a little sleep.
Sorry, Andy.
No, I was actually talking to one of our other hosts that they're having a few technical problems. This is why I always double up with people like Tim and Bob, because it gives me the chance when the guest is talking to the other one, I can slip off and help others. So. Slip
off into your comfort zone. That's okay. I know you focus a lot on the. We get involved in the child abuse too. I know you have a big focus on that. That's a horrific part of what I do. I mean, it can be a very dehumanizing business because you do see a very dark side. You see some positive things happen, but you see a very dark side of people. And I'm not even talking about infidelity, people cheating, and some of the criminal investigations that we've conducted, murders and rapes and things of that nature. I'm talking about, where we're setting up nanny cams and seeing these nannies, or it doesn't have to be people unrelated to the family. Sometimes it's family members, just their physical abuse or emotional abuse of children, documented on video. We had a case very recently where we said someone suspected that the nanny was abusing their child. This is a baby who is completely incapable of, explaining or defending herself, an infant. And sure enough, we set the video up, and it didn't take long. It took a day or two when the nanny went in there and was shaking, and when the baby was crying. I mean, really, really disturbing images. The stuff that really it tests, your visions of humanity when you see this stuff. And I always make sure that when we have a scenario like this, that the client watches the video with you or with the person, with a professional, and you're not just sending them off the video and saying, "Hey, here's what we found," because if it were me and I was the one watching that video of my child being abused, and it's not always physical, sometimes it's just verbal or depending upon the scenario, but it's horrific, and I really need to you almost always have to get law enforcement involved, because the clients always want to take matters into their own hands and run over. There was a scenario recently where someone was watching the video. It was through a remote camera. They should never have had access to it, but they were watching the video without me being present. And I just tried to get them to stay there as long as they could. They said they wanted to get up and leave and go confront the woman, and I knew nothing good was going to happen if that were the case. So I had them on my cell phone as I'm speeding over to their house to prevent what I knew could have been a major escalation. Because it's horrific when you're dealing with issues of child abuse. I don't think there's a lot lower than that. And I know you've seen enough of that, Andy, in your meanderings.
Yeah, we have a lot of problems with social workers, CPS, taking children for no good reason. Then we have the parents probably doing their own private investigations to prove their innocence. We also have in the UK, we're probably the world leaders. It's not something to be proud of, but we can sexually abuse a child as our nation every so many minutes. The children that are going missing every 3 minutes of every day in the UK. So we're the top abusers of children, and it's not a nice thing to have.
Which is mind-boggling. You know, when I think of my image and my vision of the UK. I mean, we have. I know the issues we have here in this country, and you know, oftentimes I'll be involved in a matrimonial issue or where there's custody issues at hand, and one of the parents wants to show that the other parent is abusing it because they want custody, they want sole custody, or they want visitation for the other parent, and it becomes it's very, very difficult not to get personally involved in those cases. And again, that's rarely physical abuse. They're always trying. If they get me involved, they want me to show video of, you know, abusive behavior, you know, parents screaming at one another, or having a boyfriend over, having sex in front of the kid, driving a car while they're drunk when the child is in the back, that kind of thing. Those are the types of things that we document routinely, and that stuff is used for custody issues. And it's a shame because it's not always, you're not always getting an accurate picture. You know, the fact that someone is driving with and I never will condone drinking and driving, but losing custody of your child, you know, for having a few beers and driving, you know, it's a tough again, a slippery slope. It's the state's not taking the child away; the child's going to the other spouse. But it's done for political reasons, and oftentimes it's done for monetary reasons, and they use that as leverage. So I don't see the best side of the parents always, but once in a while you do see substantial, you know, abuse, and it's comforting to know that our efforts, you know, not only documented, but they do get the child in a better position, in a better place. You know, so I said it's dehumanized.
That's the biggest mistake they make when they're fighting for divorce and money and jobs and power, whatever. They fight over the children, and that's their biggest mistake, because you end up with the other parent getting the child and the child being unhappy, or they end up in state care system, you know, at the extreme, or with nanny or auntie. I mean, all that fighting could be avoided with talking.
Right. Well, yeah, that would be nice. I mean, that would be ideal, no question about it. I mean, I literally had a case. Oh gosh, I guess 6 or 7 months ago, with a very prominent physician, heart surgeon on Long Island, from the Middle East he was, and his wife retained me to watch him every time he had the child, because he had visitation rights. She was awarded custody, but she thought that he was going to try to take the child out of the country. So this was a very, very stressful case for me, because, I mean, if you're following someone and there's infidelity involved, you know, if you lose them, okay, so you pick up and try it another day. But in this case, I'll never forget following this gentleman. He was heading right towards Kennedy Airport. So I think her fears were justified. And I'm saying to myself, no matter what happens, I have to stay with this car. I have to break every traffic law in the world, because what, you know, the means. The end justifies the means in this scenario. I need to prevent this kid. The mother would never see him again. He was a very, very affluent, very prominent physician who had a lot of ties to Mideastern countries, and there was no way she was ever going to see this kid again if he got out of the country. So I was, like I said, breaking every law. But finally, when you're doing that, he noticed me in the mirror. This was a scenario where I could not avoid detection, and I got to the point where I literally pulled up next to him, and I had the order in my hands, fortunately, where he was not allowed to remove the child from the country. And then I just said to him, hey, are you kidding? Are we really going to go this way? And he said, look, I don't know what you're talking about. And he turned around and went to Burger King or McDonald's or something. And but yeah, that was very stressful. That was a scenario where had I lost him on the highway, or had I not done what I did to follow him, you know, it could have been a life-changing event for everyone involved. And you know, it's scary. You know, we don't always get those cases, but when you do get them, you need to take them serious.
What would you say was your most intriguing or exciting case that you worked on, or you could discuss 2 or 3 of them as far as that goes? But yeah.
Well, I mean that case was pretty heavy duty, but I had a case in Staten Island. It was a scenario where the people owned a very large electronics business, and the wife paid to have the husband killed, but she was acquitted criminally. But everybody in the world knew that she had. There were two individuals who she paid testified that she paid them. The whole community knew that or suspected she was guilty. For some reason, the district attorney did less than a diligent job, and she was acquitted criminally. And obviously, with the double jeopardy clause, there's no way she's going to jail. She can't be convicted, subsequently of that crime. But what happens in that case is they had children involved, and the court they get an attorney involved to represent the interests of the children in the estate hearings. So her husband is dead, so his estate has an attorney. That attorney got me involved, and basically the woman would get no money, and it was a lot of money involved. You're talking about millions and millions of dollars. A beautiful, on the Toad Hill section of Staten Island, beautiful home, millions of dollars, the estate. She would have no entitlement to that if we could somehow show that she was instrumental in her husband's death. And so what I did not have access to the DA's file. I had to reinvent the wheel, but I went out to the dreariest bars in Staten Island and spoke with witnesses who she had contacted to kill him, who said no and that kind of thing. And then I found someone that witnessed a financial transaction between her and the individual who actually, wound up killing him. And we had so much against her, where she certainly, if it was a criminal scenario, I don't know why the DA didn't come up with this stuff, to be very honest with you. Usually they're pretty diligent, but they for some reason they didn't come up with the same information that I had. The burden of proof is less in the civil end, too. So, we had her nailed to the wall. There was not a doubt in my mind that when we went to court, she was not going to get a penny from the estate, and it would be put in trust for the children. And the day before we were actually getting ready to go to trial over in Staten Island, she capitulated. She just gave up and said she gives up her entitlement to the money and to the estate because she knew she was going to be dead in the water, and it was going to be a major media event. The news was all over the place, the newspapers. So I figured it was the Post or one of the big newspapers. The headline said Wysand gets or the woman gets away with murder. Again, it is what it is. It was a scenario where you knew she was guilty. Unfortunately, it was not proved criminally, but we did. And the unfortunate thing is, even though this was an exciting case and it lasted a long time, and it was really the things when you think of a private investigator, it was the types of things when you think of that industry that I was really engaging in and getting involved with to get the information that I came up with. The smoky bar rooms and all that good stuff. But the bottom line is the money went into trust for the children, and she had access to it anyway. She had to use it for the health, education, maintenance of the children. So it was kind of was spinning our wheels. So I think she wound up getting most of the money anyway. It was probably monitored a little bit stricter than it would have been had it gone directly to her. So and that's it. She got away with it, and she's living happily ever after, hopefully somewhere. And she's probably a good mother, but it is what it is. It's a shame. But that stuff, I guess, goes on relatively routinely.
So the motive...
We've had a few cases like that. Some exciting stuff. I've done a lot of criminal cases, and we've done some celebrity cases. I don't even know what I can and what I can't talk about. Some of them, you have gag orders on, but Martha Ray. I've done some interesting cases that have been in the media. I've done hate crime cases, and again, I have some reservations about talking about some of them. But I guess if you're around for 25 plus years and you have a decent reputation, you're going to see some things. And I enjoy the industry. It's a passion for me. I love it, and that's probably why I've done well at it. And now I'm kind of in the for the past year, I'm kind of doing more consulting work. I'm still very actively involved in investigations, but I'm trying to do a little bit more consulting work and changing my my golden years in this business, I guess, if you will.
So the consulting work, does that involve a lot of travel?
It will, yeah. I mean, yeah, I just had a case in California. There's definitely more travel when we're doing consulting work, more speaking. So it's stuff. It's new territory for me. I'm used to going out there and producing, getting the work done, conducting surveillance. I've done thousands of surveillances, statement work, going to accident scenes. I mean, I've had immediate contact where for some insurance companies, I was the first person at these horrific truck accidents. It drains you after a while. There's almost so many of those horrific scenes that you can see of children bloody accident scenes, and so I've been there, done that, and at this point I'm trying to. I'll never remove myself completely from, actively being involved in the investigations, but I'm trying to bide my time a little bit more and do some lecturing and. Chat with guys like you. It's a little bit more enjoyable.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, in the past, going back through your family tree, is there something in your family background that would have made you well suited for this field? I mean, did you have grandfather that was a detective or a father that was in the police services or anything like that?
Yeah, no, actually nothing at all. I had blue collar. My dad was a construction worker. I was, like I said before, I ventured off into the white collar sector. I was managing a warehouse. I took a big pay cut to join that accounting firm of Ernst & Winnie at the time. But I went to a very good high school. I went to Chaminade High School on Long Island, which is an academic place, and I always did very well academically. So my wife was kind of the motivating factor. I mean, I probably would have stayed in my my ceramic management position for life. She kind of said, "Look, you have more on the ball," and she motivated me to go out there with the resumes and go door to door. And then the last place I was working before I actually became a PI, and it gets even more comical. I was working for in the law department for Equitable Life, beautiful office in New York City. In the tax division there, and I was doing some, they treated me great. I never forget, we received our pay raise, and I received a 9% raise, which was probably the top you could get there. They liked me, and I was doing a good job. But I started saying to myself, it's going to take a real long time before I ever make any money in this industry. What can I do with my life? I really got to, figure this out. And literally, I opened the phone book. I kid you not, Tim. And the first page I opened to it said private investigators, and that is how I jumped from Equitable Life into the private investigation industry. And I called the first company I looked at. It was a company called Regal Investigations. They were based in Rockville Center, in Nassau County. And I'll never forget speaking with a gentleman over there named John Delaney, who said, "Hey, this is a good time to call. We just lost an investigator. Come on in for an interview." I went in for the interview, and they asked me what my SAT scores were. And I guess they liked the response because, academically, I've always done very well. So that's not been an issue. And they offered me a job, and within 6 months, I probably doubled the salary that I had made over at Equitable Life. So it was just a good niche for me. There was a lot of luck involved in the way I segued into the industry. I don't have any tales about grandfathers being police lieutenants or anything like that. It was just a fluke that got me involved in the business, and it was a good niche. It was something that I've done well with, and I've been passionate about, which, that annoying cliche, if you love what you're doing, you'll never work a day in your life. It was true. Certainly for a while, it was true.
Yeah. It's important that we enjoy what we do. But you say you slipped into it by chance and it's just a fluke. But do you really think so? I mean, looking back, maybe it was.
Tim, I don't believe. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it found me. I really do. I think it was almost a predestination. I've impacted a lot of lives that would not have been impacted. I've had a couple of, I've actually started authoring a book, which I'm pretty much completed, finished with, and I'm going to be, looking to get published at some point moving down the road. But one of the chapters I dedicate where I had 3 near-death experiences from youth right up till very recent. So I believe I'm here for a reason. I really do, and I think this kind of happened for a reason. It happened for a purpose, and I'm not sure what that is yet. Maybe we'll figure it out. But I know I've impacted a lot of lives, through this business. There's not a doubt in my mind that the business called me somehow. There's not a doubt.
Yeah, it's hard to know sometimes what the overall impact of what you have done is going to be, because it might not be until years down the road that you see how you've created this chain reaction.
Or if you ever see it, right? If you ever see it.
Yeah. Or even if you ever see it, true enough.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree. The old butterfly effect, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, if you could imagine such a scenario, what would you imagine your butterfly effect to have been?
Oh, goodness. Just hopefully saving someone's life at some point that wound up having a great positive impact on the world moving forward. Maybe someone who goes on to develop a cure for cancer or something. Obviously these are very idealistic sentiments, but yeah, I don't know. I've thought about that a lot. I've thought about, especially when you have, some of these near-death experiences, and a couple of them have been very, very close, where I could have easily, not been here. No question about it. Horrific accidents, things of that nature. No reason to go into all the details, but you do start to say, why am I here? You question it, you say there's a reason, and you hope that at some point it'll be discernible and it'll be something you'll be able to figure out. But I think most of the time it's probably not. It's probably, might be someone who, maybe I went into 7-Eleven and spoke with someone while I was making coffee and had an impact on their life. Or I coach. I'm very involved with youth sports. Maybe that was the aspect of my life that needed to I needed to move an individual in a specific direction who went on to pre-med. I don't know. I mean, honestly, the scenarios, when you start thinking about that stuff, they really are endless. And I would love to. I've thought about it a lot, Tim. Believe me. I wish I could figure it out, but I'm pretty comfortable in the fact that I'm not going to be the guy getting a cure for cancer. But there's probably something at some point in my life that I did that had an important impact, as in most people.
Yeah. So, you say that in large part it was the advice and counsel of your wife that got you to try other avenues and actually led you to taking this step. So,
right, this leap of faith, absolutely.
Yeah. So, in the whole context of predestination and maybe this was fated to be and all this kind of thing, presumably there was some magic that brought the two of you together as well, right? That she's been a positive influence in your life and helped you. There was.
It was. That's another magical step. Absolutely. It was. I met Paula through. I was a big baseball player. Like you heard in the bio that I got a scholarship to play baseball in college right out of high school, and as that was over, I played in a lot of softball leagues. So I remember having a softball tournament out in the east end of Long Island, and it was raining. So I had a couple guys in the car. We were getting ready to drive out there. I said, I don't want to drive all the way out there, if the game's going to be rained out, because it was like 40 miles away or something. So I pulled into a little bar called Bill's Hideaway in Seaford and stopped in, and Paula was there with her girlfriend, whose mother was the barmaid. So she was just there, patronizing her girlfriend's mom who was there. And there was someone on the phone. We didn't have cell phones back then. It was a payphone. You had to put the coin in the cone, and the coin in the phone, and someone was on the phone. So I had to sit and wait for a minute. And Paula started talking to me, and I said, I'm just getting ready to go out east to a softball tournament. And finally, the person got off the phone. I went and I made my call, found out the game was still on, and started walking out. And she kind of grabbed me, and I think she had met me, which I don't remember. She had met me some time ago when I was playing. She had seen me playing ball somewhere, but she grabbed me on the way out and said, here's my telephone number. Call me. So if it hadn't been raining that day, I never would have met Paula, and I never would have probably found this future. Or if the game was canceled, or whatever, there's just a million scenarios. How that it's mind-boggling to me when you start thinking about that. How everyone's life would be a little bit different had just one thing, been different on a day 25, 30, 40, 50 years ago, whatever the case may be. It's I love thinking about it, but it happens to be 100% accurate. So Paula, she changed my life.
Well, that's a very nice story. Very nice. I love stories. Yeah.
Life happens for a reason. It happens for a reason, Tim. I believe it. I'm a firm believer in that. Everything happens for a reason, and you kind of convince yourself of that at some point. It helps you through some tough times. There's no doubt about it. It really does. But I'm a firm believer in that things do happen for a reason.
Yeah, and oftentimes we only focus on the good things and assume that this piece of chance happened or that piece of luck happened because it was meant to, but we fail to recognize that sometimes the tragedies or the seeming misfortunes in our lives are also oftentimes a disguised, I won't go so far as to say a disguised blessing necessarily, but they're at least meant to be helpful in pointing us along the way to fulfilling our destiny. And oftentimes the misfortune or the unfortunate circumstance had to come along because we were stubbornly not allowing that change to come into our life, and so change had to be forced into our life, if you could put it that way.
Right, absolutely. I think that's well put. I agree 100%. There's no doubt about it. And being able to take something positive or something out of a situation that, and again, in this industry, I've seen, some of the darkest side of humanity imaginable. Some of these a perfect example. A woman who owns several diners here on Long Island had asked me to find her son. The police apparently weren't doing enough, and he was only missing for a couple of days. But she knows her son. She knows that there was something wrong. And it was very apparent she was in pain. She loved him. She adored him. The police, wanted a little more time, I guess, to elapse before they went ahead with any type of investigation. And, I started conducting a pretty thorough investigation, went to his room, called old friends, that type of thing, and found, unfortunately, this was a tragic ending where I found out that he had overdosed in an upstate motel. And, trying to break that news, to this woman, you start to say to yourself, what possibly can, how can anything positive ever come out of a scenario like this? And I've been involved in many of those scenarios, and I'll never forget being at a meeting. I'm on the board of directors for several different youth sports organizations, and I was at a meeting listening to a bunch of football coaches arguing over rules at a 5- and 6-year-old level. The evening that I just told this woman, that her son was passed, and had hugged her for an hour in my arms, and I started crying at this football meeting, saying, I kind of put things in perspective, from that point forward, and I became a lot less stressed over things that are not relevant or don't matter. I don't want to say not relevant, but rules in a 5- and 6-year-old football game. You know what I mean? So I grew a lot from that experience. I can't imagine what this poor mom got out of this But I got a lot out of that experience. I wouldn't charge this poor woman a penny after what she went through. But it really put my life in perspective, and I kind of took something away from that particular investigation and that experience, and it's lived with me forever. And it's kind of what I've. It's really. It kind of shows how I run my life at this point. I just don't sweat the book "Don't Sweat the Small Stuff." Well, that's from that day. That's the way I really live life.
Well, that's a beautiful story, and that should be in your book. And probably the only positive thing that she has to draw from the experience is the fact that a nice guy was there to allow her to cry on his shoulder.
Yeah. It was sad. It was a life-changing experience, to say the least. It really was. But again, that's part of. I guess it comes with the territory in this industry and what you do. You're not only always going to have great stories to share. You're going to have some, and then there's some of the stuff we didn't get. I mean, there's some real comical stuff that happens, in the business too. There's a lot on the lighter side. I forget, pretty recently, I wish this is something that happened early in my career. I would have an excuse. I could say I wasn't experienced. But I was doing a surveillance, I guess about a year ago. So I'm 24 years into the business. You'd think you would have enough, experience to eliminate scenarios like this. But so a woman had asked me to follow her husband from work to see what he was doing. He went to a company softball game, and it was a little park where the only cars in the parking lot were for the people from this company that were playing in this softball game. Otherwise, it was a huge parking lot, completely empty. And so I'm driving by in my surveillance van, and I'm trying to look as I'm driving. I'm rolling along. I'm looking at, the softball field, trying to watch what he's doing, who he's engaging in conversation with, and things of that nature. And I'm not watching where I'm going. And I drove over this little stanchion that they had there in the middle of nowhere. You literally would have to aim for it to hit it, kind of a thing. And it made a loud noise. And everybody, at the softball game was looking at me now. Now I'm made. They see this car out there that doesn't belong. I'm trying to back up, and they're all laughing at me. I'm trying to move forward. I couldn't get this thing out from under my car. It was a fiasco. So, you'd think that would be a scenario you'd never would. At 24 years into the industry, you'd never have to have an embarrassing moment like that. But, you do. It happens. And we were watching another gentleman. Again, for some reason, the surveillance is most of the light side of the industry does come from the surveillance, because you never know what you're going to see out there. But I'll never forget being parked in front of a house where we're trying to observe an individual, and we couldn't really get a good vantage point down the block, so we actually had a position right in front of the house. And as we're sitting in the surveillance van, another vehicle, like a plumbing truck or something, pulls up behind us and bangs into the surveillance van. So now we're in the back of the van, smashes into the surveillance van, so we need to make a decision now, because it was a pretty hard impact. The van's probably damaged, so do we get out and blow our cover, or do we stay in there? But we decided to get out of the van because it was a significant enough impact, and the plumber started moving out of there. He was going to get out of there real quick, but he was shocked when we get out of the van, and so he's like, oh, no. So we start exchanging our papers and getting ready to bring the police over there, and I see the curtains start moving in the house of the gentleman we were watching, and it was a scenario where he was alleging he was injured, and we didn't think he was. So it was any physical activity was relevant. But at some point before the police got there, this gentleman exited his house, came walking out, and said to our surveillance operative, look, I have a great lawyer, I have a great chiropractor, even if you're not hurt, they'll get you a ton of money. And he starts going into this whole spiel about how to beat the system. I mean, it was comical. The only thing that was annoying, we couldn't have any cameras running at the time because we're sitting there talking to, but it would have been the best video in the world, listening to, it was the best. He told us how it's so easy to fool the system, and you just got to lay down, you got to pretend you're hurt, and his chiropractor will go for it, and his lawyer will get you. I was sitting there biting my lip. It was beautiful stuff. So you never know what you're going to find out there. There is a lighter side to the business. It's not always like I encountered that day with the poor diner owner woman. But I do love the industry, though. I really do.
Oh, yeah. Fascinating work, for sure. So, any idea on numbers? Any idea on how many cases you've actually handled in your
God, Tim. That's a good question. I mean, thousands. I really don't know. I've never, it would be something I could probably actually have records of all of them in logbooks. So at some point I could pretty easily get that number. But it's a scary number. It's a whole lot of cases because, a lot of times, even though when you're doing a matrimonial case, they think that's the only file you have, and they keep calling you 24/7. You have a desk full of active files that you're working on, making calls on, setting up appointments. So, I mean, literally thousands and thousands. Although they're not quite as frequent now as they used to be because the changes we discussed in the industry in general, my company is much smaller now than it used to be. I used to have 18 full-time people working. It was one of the largest firms in the state. And now I'm not at that point. I still love taking on big cases and challenges. So the cases are much fewer and further between. But, God, Tim, I don't know, thousands.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting for me to compare notes with you because I rely on a private investigator in a different kind of way. My private investigator is a spiritual advisor that can tell me about bumps on the road and who's doing what behind my back and what's going on over here and over there. And her private investigative agency is up in heaven, and they're my ancestral and guardian spirits. So there you go.
Oh, okay. I can't compete with that. That's for sure.
It's fascinating to see how I go back to her and her services all the time. So presumably, you must have repeat customers as well.
Oh, sure, absolutely. We have a lot of in the commercial end of the business, the insurance companies, the law firms. We do work for a lot of them, I mean they'll just keep, as long as you keep getting the results. You are only as good as your last case in this industry, unfortunately. I wish that were not the case, but unfortunately, it is a business, and they're not going to stand for giving a report saying I was on surveillance for 10 hours and didn't see anything. Those days are long gone. So I do have very, very loyal customers that have been with me for a long time. But you still need to produce. You still need to provide, a quality service to them. And I do strive to maintain that level. I should. I should. You're being paid for a service, and not cheaply. It's not an inexpensive, service. So hopefully it keeps going in that direction.
Sure. Well, I'm imagining that you just have the kind of character where you try to do your best no matter what you're doing. So that's good.
Absolutely.
Sure. So, Andy, you want to wrap up and say a few final words and maybe ask a key question here before we wrap up?
Oh dear, I don't know about a key question. But a question would be, where can people find your great services? The website, any blogs you have, any email you want to give out? Because it's fantastic. We very rarely, well, no, I'll shut up. It's not very often, when someone's trying to sell a product, you get someone very genuine on, most people kind of, I'm not bothered either way, but, you've got heart in what you do, you're passionate at what you do, and I've not seen that from many people many times. I mean, we get lovely stories on here, we get very sad ones, we get good guests, we get bad guests, but you're very passionate at what you do, and take my hat off to you there, George.
Oh, I appreciate that, Andy. Thanks for the kind words, and I try. That's all. Certainly, that's certainly all I can do. It's hard not to get personally involved in some of these cases. I do. That's if I have a weakness in the industry, that's it. You really should stay completely removed from a personal standpoint in a lot of these cases, and it's difficult. It's difficult to do that. You always interject some semblance of humanity, your own your own beliefs, your own and if I ever develop the ability to remove myself from these cases completely, I don't know that I would be the same person. I really don't, because I do it because I enjoy it. Not always happy results, like I said. But I appreciate you giving me the opportunity. If anyone ever needs a private investigator, they certainly can reach me. The telephone number is 631-360-1380. The company is George Scheld Investigations. And I wasn't, expecting to do a self-promo there, but I appreciate the opportunity. Again, it's George Scheld Investigations, 631-360-1380. I'm actually in the process of getting a website set up, only because I'm starting to do more interviews and more consulting work. So that'll be up shortly. But you can always get me at the telephone number, or my email is Scheld, SCHELD, at optonline.net. So it's SCHELD at OPTONLINE.net. I'll definitely get back to you if you call.
Brilliant. And I think we can probably, once you get your new website up, we don't mind sharing, links, because everything we kind of do on our station, there's always going to be a need at some point for PI. So, yeah, we'll exchange links with a PI if you want.
That would be great. I think you guys do a great job. You really do. And, yeah, no, I would welcome that. I know there was a temporary link set up through a marketing company. I think it's, oh, gosh, I don't even know. There you go. George Scheld Investigator. I'm not even positive what it is, so I won't bother to say it. That shows you how much I promote the my business. Fortunately it's something that I've never really needed to do. I've never. It's always been a word of mouth kind of a scenario, and it's usually just going out there, getting results, and giving these clients a good bang for their buck, trying to do things as economically as possible. That's another thing. I'll be in divorce court over that stuff, because sometimes I do stuff for free, and for when people are giving sob stories, I get to, and it's difficult, because we have our own financial issues, and Paula has always told me, hey, you can't be that way anymore. But it's just, I guess it's who I am. But that's not something I'm promoting right now. Paying clients are good too, but I do try. I really do. I enjoy it.
Keep in touch, please do, George.
I will, Andy. Thanks so much for the opportunity, and Tim, it was a pleasure.
Yeah, it was great having you on. Absolutely. I just want to have one last question, and that is, is there someone you're mentoring? Do you have an apprentice, someone who might inherit the business when you step down, anything like that?
Well, I do a lot of work with interns, college kids that are going through their internship programs, and I have a lot of fun teaching them the industry, and some of them do meander off into it. Right now, my son, who I would have, thought may have been in line to take it over, is not interested. And you know what? You can't force him. It is what it is. He's going to find his own path in his own way, and if some point he meanders back over, I'd welcome the opportunity to teach him what I know. But no one at this point, is in line to take it over. So it'll be me for the next few years, and we'll see from there.
Okay, well, good. I just hope you find the right apprentice to learn your way of doing things. And
I appreciate that. I hope so.
Yeah. That's great. Well, thanks.
Thanks, gentlemen. I appreciate everything.
Yeah. Okay, thanks so much.
Okay, be well.
You too. All the best.
Be well, George.
Take care, Andy. Bye-bye.
Take care. Well, we'll just play the promo again, Tim, and we'll end the show. Karma Bodeman, the press secretary for Runaway, is on the show on Monday with the Truth Police at 5 p.m. UK, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time.
Thank you for listening to the Freedom Talk Radio Network and the Knights of Liberty show. with your host, Andy Peacher, and author Timothy Spearman. Live from Grimsby in the UK and Toronto in Canada every Saturday at 5 p.m. UK time and 12 noon Eastern Standard Time in the USA and Canada. Call into the show when the phone lines are open. UK call-in number 0131 618 7778. And from the USA and Canada, call 315 462 4100. Visit the station's website on www.freedomtalkradio.co.uk and author Timothy Spearman's website www.shakespeare.com. That's www.shakespeare.com. Look at Tim's recent books, Odds on Favourite and Butterfly Dreams, found on the homepage and the Books tab.
freedomtalkradio.co.uk.
This is the most diverse,
Most amazing.
one of the funniest radio stations you could ever listen to.
Off the internet.
I've heard so much stuff from the ups, the downs, the lefts, the rights.
The politics, the non-politics, the schmolitics, whatever you want to call them.
It's great.